Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again for Good Evening Johnny Mo with the movies. We are bringing you episode 53 tonight. We just saw The Batman last night, and we're bringing you the review. This is fresh. This is one of the freshest movies I think we've done in a long time where we actually got to do the review literally the next night.
Yep.
So we've had time to kind of go over our thoughts. We spoke to each other at right outside the movie when we saw it, and a little bit before we started taping. But before we do that, remember, spoilers alert. If you have not seen the film yet, we are going to be talking spoilers in this film. And before we do anything else, we're going to be doing our drink of the night. So
Yes.
grab your drink, and here's what we got.
Okay, so I am drinking one of my favorite beers. It's out of Louisiana, New Orleans, I'm sure. Abita Turbo Dog Brown Ale. And I was just reading the little description. I want to read it because this beer is really enjoyable. Turbo Dog is a dark brown ale brewed with pale caramel and chocolate malts and Willamette hops. This combination gives the brew its rich body and color and a sweet chocolate toffee-like flavor, which I like, which is uncommon because I am not a big fan of chocolate stouts at all. I don't like chocolate stouts, but I like this chocolatey type ale.
Well, it's the combination.
Yeah, it's really good.
I have a very simple leftover holiday ale from the holidays. Yes, it is March, but I still have a couple of these left, and I'm finally getting rid of them. So
But who
that's what
makes
I'm
it?
going with.
Who makes the holiday ale?
Sam Adams.
Oh, okay.
Sam Adams
Which
makes it.
is actually kind of perfect because even though it is March, I believe I'm slated for two Christmas parties in March.
A little delayed, but we're getting them in.
We have a family Christmas party in March.
Yeah, part two.
Part two, and I'm supposed to have a friend's Christmas party in March that we for
There
some
you
reason
go.
we weren't able to do it. So yeah, so Christmas, which is why I haven't shaved my beard yet. I'm saving it for all the Christmas parties.
Yes, I know. Your wife loves that.
Yep.
So cheers to that.
Cheers.
Thank you again to everybody who's listening, watching us. Appreciate your support as always.
Oh man, that is good. I do enjoy a nice Abita Turbo Dog. First time I ever had a Abita Turbo Dog was at Big Daddy's, which is a Louisiana Cajun
Cajun style?
Cajun restaurant by Sunrise Mall. Yeah, good stuff.
Nice. All right, well, with
So
that.
the Batman.
So this is the Matt
Oh,
Reeves.
we're wearing Batman shirts, right?
Got
We
it.
both have Batman shirts.
Yep, being a little festive, I think, with the
I have
shirts tonight.
I had to dig this out of my drawer. It's very well worn. It's got a hole right there. It's got I want to say these are bleach stains.
Yes,
But Chris says I need a new Batman shirt.
at some point. That'll be a birthday gift.
Yeah, not that I'll I'm okay with getting a new Batman shirt. Not that I'm going to get rid of this one. This is
No,
this is,
you don't get rid of shirts. You
No.
just add to the collection.
like this is perfect to go to comic conventions. You show up at the Comic Con with the beat up Marvel shirt or Batman shirt. It adds character.
So Matt Reeves gets his shot at rebooting Batman.
He's the director.
He's the director.
And what has he done in the past?
Well, he did the last two Apes films, which you know.
Planet of the Apes films.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
he
that.
he didn't
That I
do
didn't
the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but he did the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of
War
the
of the
Apes.
Planet of the Apes. Oh, okay.
So he did the last two of those.
What about has he done any other superhero movies or no?
No, not to my knowledge. No.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting.
I know he's done a couple other things off the top of my head though. Right now, like I've lost it, and so I cannot remember.
That's all right.
But I know he did those two things in particular. So we get Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne Batman, and
This is a guy who I never knew, never seen him before. Everybody knows him apparently because of Twilight.
Well, I mean that's when you hear the name, that's the first thing that comes to mind because that was a big role for him.
Is he in the entire Twilight series?
Yeah, he's
Like,
one of the
he's a
main
recurring-
characters.
Oh, okay,
He's one of the
so-
main characters.
Okay.
in-
See,
in the film.
that's a film series I've never watched and probably never will. I think I could go the rest of my life without seeing any Twilight.
I think it'd be
movies.
okay if you didn't see them.
I'm totally okay with that.
He was in one of the Harry Potter films.
Oh, okay.
He had a decent role in one of those films. He was in The Lighthouse more recently.
Okay, that's a
Which-
black and white film.
Now that
I'm
he got a
actually
lot of
looking forward to seeing.
he got a lot of praise for that film, and was it Water for Elephants? It's from a few years back. He was in that.
Name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
I think it was Water for Elephants, and he was actually he was really good in that movie too.
Now, someone like told me that this guy's like, a heartthrob. Like, he's really good looking. And I'm almost like I don't see it. To me, he seems odd. Like I found him to be a little bit of an odd choice for Batman because usually like the Bruce Wayne type is like a charismatic type guy. And this, I don't know, to this guy seemed like more like he belonged in the Addams family. In all honesty, like he.
Well, he takes.
But to me, it's almost like it's a different type of Batman. So I'm okay with that because that's one of the things that when we're going to talk a lot about in this movie is how different this movie is to other movies.
This movie is
kind.
extremely. I really almost want to say that it is extremely different than some of the other Batman films that we've had in recent history,
and even some of the other superhero films.
I mean,
because in all honesty, Christopher Nolan's Batman series is very different from, I think, other superhero films. I think there's an extra layer of complexity and style that you
but also he's going for realism. Like Nolan wanted it to exist in the real world as much as possible.
Yeah, well, I think Nolan was making a movie
with Batman in it.
Right, whereas everybody else just is making a superhero movie with superhero
X character, right?
Whatever. They didn't really follow the formula that you expect. I think Joker was the same way. Joker might be the epitome of that. Joker might be the best example of the greatest departure to the form,
right?
With the best results. But certainly Christopher Nolan's the second one, Dark Knight, with Heath Ledger's Joker, like that to me might be the single best superhero film ever made, with the exception of Superman the movie. And this movie is kind of like that too. It's very different, and
it is. That. It's almost like a noir style, like detective.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah,
this is very much one of the best detective Batman films I think we've had. Where we actually see him be a detective.
Yeah,
and not just a guy in a cowl. He's
figuring stuff out
at crime scenes with Gordon and the police. This is supposed to take place around year 2. If you listen to Matt Reeves talk about this, it's like he's really in his second year.
Oh, is that what it is?
Batman.
Second year back? Okay, good.
So that's why the cops don't trust him still.
I'll be honest with you. Somebody else mentioned that to me, and I was like, I really don't. I didn't know, because one thing that they don't do in this movie is they don't really get too much into the origin.
No, which is okay.
Yeah, because at the
I'm
end
okay
of the day,
with that.
This movie was how long?
Almost 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours, and now if you're going to do everything you want to do, but then you throw a whole origin thing on top of it with now
that's another few minutes.
You're either adding another half hour to the film, or you're taking out a half hour of the stuff that you wanted to do. At the end of the day, I think we've seen enough Batman origin stories.
We kind of know what happens.
We can fill in the blanks,
and it's even hinted at. And that was the one thing I thought that they did. So they didn't show it. They didn't take it to a flashback, but it's discussed. It's discussed that his parents are gunned down.
Right.
And there's a mystery behind who did it. So I'm fine with that. I don't think we need to see Batman's origin in every single Batman film. Excuse me. I think we've seen that enough in the past to know how he came to be. I think that's a gutsy and intelligent move on the part of the filmmakers, where every single thing doesn't need to be spelled out to you and shown. There's things that you can infer, imply, and but just from the dialogue,
and just get going.
But also just infer from the dialogue. The dialogue does a good job of not doing a flashback, just speaking about it in the present and getting the idea of, okay, I get it. His even if you didn't know Batman, if you went into this film and you had no idea who he was or how he came to be, you can get the idea that his parents were gunned down.
Right.
little departure from the Nolan films where we see Bruce Wayne depart the United States and go and train off in other parts of the world with all these experts.
Yeah.
There's discussions that happen with Alfred, who's played by Andy Serkis, who were
Is it Zirkus or Circus?
Circus, Zerkis,
Zirkus? Andy Circus?
Circus.
There's a scene. I don't know if you caught it, but there's a scene in there where Alfred is talking and he talks about, I don't know, like it's something about a circus. Did you?
Oh,
And I'm like, was that just is that in there completely by accident, or is that just like a goofy reference to his real name?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't see that being a reference to his name. I feel like that I think is a coincidence.
Okay.
But there's a line where they're speaking to, or Circus is Alfred speaking to Bruce, and it sounds he's talking about him training him. So it almost sounds like this is the Alfred, like, and there have been versions of where like Alfred has trained Bruce to be this fighter that he's grown up to be. So it almost seems like that's kind of the route that this movie is taking. We get Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle,
As
Catwoman.
Catwoman,
Yep.
who is absolute. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything before.
She's been in a few roles. Little Liars. What's that called? I think it was a show on like HBO.
Oh, pretty little
No,
lies,
not,
something like that.
not that one. Not that one. There's it was one with like Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Something about
That's it.
lies.
Yes, but there's a show called Pretty Little Liars, but that was that's like a
That's
teenage
a different
show.
show. But whatever show you're talking about, that's what I'm thinking of too.
Yeah,
But she's absolutely beautiful. I mean, she's beautiful.
she's gorgeous.
Yeah, I
and
mean-
she's also like I think she's great in the role. I mean, honestly, I did enjoy Anne Hathaway as Catwoman, but no one held a candle to Michelle Pfeiffer. Like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman in Batman Returns, like that
She's a
was
good Catwoman.
That was a good Catwoman.
They don't quite explain why she is what she is.
No, like why she's like
Why
a cat
she's
burglar,
a cat burglar, like, or why
No.
she needs to be, or how she got this. Because she's
or how she got so skilled.
yeah,
Well, we just know that. I mean, we find out in the course of the film that she's
the daughter.
of Carmine Falcone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I think that's a twist. Like, I actually don't know if that's in any.
Yeah. Now I'll be honest with you. Is Carmine Falcone from the comics?
Yes.
Okay, because that's not a name I'm familiar with at all.
Well, he was also in Batman Begins, Carmine Falcone.
Oh, really? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, at the end of the day, like all the different mobsters and gangsters, unless they're like
The Falcones and the Maronis, like that's the name in Batman lore.
those are names
Like,
of the Batman lore.
yeah,
Okay.
that's in Batman history. So, but to bring out Carmine Falcone.
I mean,
and that was the thing too.
more people remember the Rogues Gallery of like the costume,
The actual-
people,
yeah.
as opposed to just like real people that are doing stuff that are just bad.
Right.
You know, like at the end of the day, the Falcones and the Maronis aren't any they're not supervillains.
No.
They're just gangsters.
Right. And it's just, and this is taking place in modern day. Mm-hmm. And I think that was interesting too, because when this film was getting made, bless you, there was a question of when this film was taking place. I remember when it was being filmed, there was a lot of secrecy around the movie, who the villains were going to be, whether we were going to see other heroes in this, and if this takes place in, like, where does this take place in the new DC film universe, right?
Yeah, and we don't see or even hear of any other heroes.
No, but what I actually just read before we started filming this, that there was supposed to be a scene, and it was cut of, so remember the film opens up on Halloween?
Yes.
There was supposed to be a scene where you see trick-or-treaters dressed up as Superman and Wonder Woman.
Oh, that's hysterical.
So, which means that they exist in the universe, that these characters exist.
Yes.
So it would almost be like opening a whole new wave of filmmaking, so to speak, in this Batman universe, right?
Unless they're fictional characters in that universe, which is unlikely.
Which would be, I would think, would be unlikely.
Yeah.
But You never know. But I guess, and I had, from what I had read, this scene
I wonder why they.
was filmed, but
I wonder why they cut
there
that.
was either cut or it was just storyboards. They saw storyboards of this. So either one, there was a plan or at some point in time that had these characters involved, and it did not end up in the film.
Maybe they just maybe thought it would just been a little cheesy.
It could have been. Or maybe they just wanted it to be like Nolan, where it's just Batman in the universe and there's no other superheroes.
Well, that's one of the things that's one of the things that DC makes it hard for you is that when you see a Marvel movie, you know it's taking place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's almost
Right.
a no-brainer. Whereas with the DC movies, because they're so fragmented and you don't it's always a question: is this taking place in that core of movies that are considered to be part of the DC Cinematic Universe, or is it just its own independent offshoot or whatnot?
Right, like Joker.
Yeah, and it's a shame because that's just due to DC's lack of, I don't know, I want to say lack of vision to be able to
Yeah.
just say, do everything with one concise, thought process, with one concise storyline and tie everything in.
Yep. I think for right now, we're just going to assume that it's its own standalone franchise. That's kind of where I would put this.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if it's year two, you know, the guy who played Batman recently, what's his name?
Ben Affleck?
Ben Affleck. He's much older. Mm-hmm. That Batman's year two was a hell of a long time ago.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Which was the whole thought of, is he supposed to be playing, initially when they were announcing this, is he supposed to play a younger version of the Ben Affleck? And obviously he's not.
Yeah.
But this is the film, so, for those of you who don't know this, when Ben Affleck was signed on to play Batman originally, and he did Batman vs Superman and then did Justice League, he was supposed to have his own Batman film, which Affleck was directing and starring in, and it was going to be a film with him versus Deathstroke. Deathstroke was going to be the main villain. And we get a glimpse of Deathstroke in the
we definitely saw
in the
Justice League.
after the after
Zack,
credits.
Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah.
So that would have been a fantastic film because I think Ben Affleck has turned himself into a good filmmaker. I do enjoy his Batman. I thought a lot of scenes in the Batman vs Superman film he did very well in. I would have liked to have seen that movie, and then at some point in time, it ended up he didn't want to direct it. He was just going to be in it, but they were going to use his story, and then that got scrapped altogether. Really unfortunate. There was even test footage of Joe Manganiello dressed up as Deathstroke, not just for the Zack Snyder after credits scene. And it's a real shame that we don't get that film.
But I have a feeling at some point that Deathstroke is a character that will be pulled in because it's
I think so,
kind of
too.
hard not to. If you're a DC and
But he hasn't been done on the big screen, Like,
no,
in
like I said, if you're a DC and
that's
you're like, okay, who can we pull in? We need to pull some people. I'm like, all right, well, to me,
He would be
Deathstroke
someone.
is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Spectre is a no-brainer. There's lots of DC characters.
I know. There's a lot that they haven't tapped into yet, and I'm hoping to start seeing that they do that with these next series of films that we're going to be getting out. And that we could talk about towards the end. Mm-hmm. We get Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon. So again, he's back to being a lieutenant, very similar to Batman Begins. When
And I just found out that Jeffrey Wright is the voice of the Watcher in Marvel's What If series.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He was also, he was also in Westworld.
Yes, he was.
The series.
Yep, and he was also in. Oh God, what are those movies called? The Hunger Games. He was in those.
Oh, I never saw any of the Hunger Games movies.
He was in those.
I'm actually,
not bad.
I'm actually think I'm gonna. That's a franchise. Even though I've never seen any of them, I think I will actually watch one day.
You might enjoy it. The first one I think you would enjoy.
Yeah.
The other ones I don't know.
I got
but
a
the other
couple
ones,
of those.
The first one you would.
I've never seen any of those. I've never seen any of the Purge films.
Oh, a couple.
And
of
I think
ones
I
are
want to
good.
watch
Yeah.
all of them because
Yeah,
I think it's a cool concept. Anyhow, back to DC.
But Jeffrey Wright, I think that he does a fantastic job as Gordon. Really, really good. But starts out just like Gary Oldman in Batman Begins, where he's starting off as a lieutenant. There's already a commissioner. and who are some of the other stars? Peter Skarsgård is in this. He plays a DA.
As the DA.
Yep. One of Paul Dano is probably a name that's not recognizable yet. He ends up playing the Riddler. Unbelievable. I think he does a fantastic job. I'm trying to think of some of the films he's done. He's done a few things that you've probably seen, but there's a bunch of stuff on the top of my head I can't think of.
Well, I like what they did with the Riddler because even from the previews, you could tell that this was going to be a different take of the Riddler than we've ever seen.
Yeah, this is not your Jim Carrey, bright green,
and
question mark
and
suit.
to me, at the end of the day, the Jim Carrey was just a modern version of Frank Gorshin's.
Bless you.
Excuse me, of Frank Gorshin's Riddler from the original Batman series. It wasn't anything. And not for nothing, I think Frank Gorshin did it a lot better than Jim Carrey did. But
the Riddler's like in the comics, especially nowadays, he is a very menacing character.
He's a much darker character, I'm sure.
And you see that during, Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb did a series called Hush back in the mid 2000s.
In the comics.
Oh
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Riddler's a part of that. I mean, he's a very menacing character, and he's had a few storylines since then where he is extremely smart and menacing, not physically, but on a mental game with Batman.
That's pretty funny. I think I have those. I think I have the double set of Hush hardcovers.
You haven't read them yet?
If I read them, it was a long time ago. So
they're fantastic reads.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of the brand new take on an old character because I think back in the day it was always a matter of if it was already done, do it the same way. If it was never done, do it exactly like it is in the comics, so on and so forth. And basically, in all honesty, to me, Jack Nicholson's Joker is not that far off from Cesar Romero's Joker in the Batman TV show. He really isn't.
I don't disagree with that.
Same thing with Danny DeVito's Penguin. Danny DeVito's Penguin is not that far off from
Burgess
Meredith's Penguin from the Batman show. And at some point, it gets boring if you've seen the same thing, and
you're not seeing it expand.
And the character that they've had the most success doing differently, apparently, obviously, is the Joker, because you have
we have Heath Ledger's.
After Cesar Romero and Jack Nicholson, what do you have? You have Heath Ledger's Joker. You have Jared Leto's Joker, and then you have
Joaquin
Phoenix's Joker.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, all three of those Jokers are different from the previous versions, and different from each other,
and all different in recent times.
Yeah, I think all three of them are great. We've talked about this in the past, but I think all three of those Jokers are great, and it's like so I think it's important for them to take that approach. Now I think what they did with Catwoman isn't radically different from what was done in the past, but it's different enough to make it interesting. What they've done with the Riddler in this movie, very radically different. I don't know that it's as successful as the Joker variation that we saw.
Yeah.
But it definitely worked, and it was interesting. I wouldn't put it as one of the great iconic villains of all time, what they did with this Riddler. But it was different. It was a bold move. It was daring. It worked for the film. I liked it. It just didn't completely blow me away like those other things did. But then you got Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell
as
is
the Penguin.
Unrecognizable.
You
can't tell who.
I leaned over in the film. I mean, is it CG?
It's a lot of cosmetics.
Did he put on weight?
I think it's a lot of prosthetics, like facial prosthetics for that. And of course, he's in a suit.
It's got to be some sort of, yeah.
I leaned over in the film because I knew who it was, and I leaned over in the film and I'm looking at John and I'm like, "Do you know who that is?"
And I'm like,
he's like, "You got to give me a minute."
I'm like, "I have no idea, but don't tell me. I want to see if I can figure it out." And after a minute, I'm like, I have no idea who that is. No,
because it doesn't look like him at all. You want to talk about a guy who completely transformed himself. Not only that, he's a scene stealer. Every time Farrell's on screen as Penguin,
He commands.
oh my God, he was great.
He has a commanding presence on screen.
You know, and you're talking about even this the scene that he had with Gordon and Batman, where like he's basically cornered.
Yeah.
You know, and they're questioning him. He was great in that scene.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I'm waiting for him. I'm waiting for his dialogue to come. You know, and it's so good, and it just the way he emerges as the Penguin by the end of this. You know, you almost can't wait to see where it goes in
Yeah.
the next film. Like I'm looking forward to seeing him again.
Now they had I think it was right before that scene where the Gordon and Batman cornered the Penguin was that car chase scene.
Yes,
And it's actually a pretty cool looking car chase.
it was a good car chase scene.
Now at the end of the day, and this is something I told Chris, is because it's in the rain. And funny, like they have the windshield wipers on in the cars, and I'm like, it's raining a lot. Like the windshield wipers are not on their heaviest setting, and they should have been. But I'm sure they didn't do it because if it was going too fast, it would interfere with the visual. But I'm
Right.
like, but I remember leaning over to Chris going like, you know, those windshield wipers actually should be going a little faster because of the rain they're going through. But the explosions at the end of that scene.
From the trucks, from the semis.
Yeah,
right?
it's actually, I think a lot of people just, look at that car chase and they're like, oh, this is an exciting car chase. And then like there's, this explosion going on and the Penguin thinks he's gotten away. But like right before the explosion hits, you kind of see that the Batmobile is driving up like a ramp, like one of those trucks that carry cars. Mm-hmm. It's driving up the ramp of the truck. So it's gonna like emerge, out of the flames and be right on Penguin's ass again.
Right.
And I think the deceiving part of that film is people going like, "Wow, that's cool."
Yes.
But guess what? That explosion
Might have blew up the car.
killed a lot of people.
Oh, on the other side of it.
there's a lot of dead. I mean, because trucks were fishtailing and crashing into each other, and there's cars.
There's cars in between.
There's cars in between.
Yeah.
So like if you're Batman, like at some point, when the cops are in a high speed chase, they stop chasing because it becomes too dangerous. Like at no point, like did Batman say, "All right, I better, I'll get him next time." Like at no point did he stop chasing him. At the end of the day, a lot of people got killed.
Yeah.
It was really bad. It was like explosions that caused other things to explode.
It's a domino effect.
It was a ripple effect of explosions. It was devastating. And I'm just like, I think a lot of people just because it was really cool, like everyone remembers that cool visual of the Batmobile.
Well, you're looking at that. You're not thinking about.
Yeah, you're not
what
thinking about
happened
the people
on the
that
other
just
side
got
of that.
incinerated and blown to pieces. I was like, wow, a lot of people died in that, and I didn't see that on the news. a lot of things show up on the news during the movie, but that wasn't one of them.
You know what was a couple of things that I thought this film did really well because they're trying to keep it in the real world and especially modern time. There's times where the Riddler is live streaming.
Yeah, he's like a tech, like
But he's using social media.
total, techie, social media, got followers.
He's using this to his advantage, and
very
he's
21st century.
Yeah, and like he's getting like it's almost like if some crackpot were to do this, this is what they would do, and they would post all their videos online, and they would get followers and people that would want to do what this person is saying.
Yeah,
And it's like it ends up almost like becoming like a small version of a cult.
yeah.
But
I'm sure this is how raves get put together.
Yeah, but
People just show up.
I just thought that was done really well, and it's definitely more of like modern time that you would see something like this, or someone would use social media to their advantage, but using it in a an evil manner, like a way that it wasn't meant to be used.
Right.
But taking advantage of the technology. I thought that was great. I thought the grappling hook was innovative and new, where it wasn't a gun off of his belt like we've seen in previous films. It basically it's almost like a wrist shot where like it's almost like it comes out of a holster.
A
in his
Batman's
wrist.
grappling. That to me,
You didn't see that?
I didn't really register that because at the end of the day, I've seen Batman
It's almost like it came
connect to things in a distance and swing and whatever.
his gauntlets on his forearms were oversized compared to what we've seen in the past. His whole body armor, his suit, like if we talk about the costume for a second, the costume is a little bit more reminiscent of the more recent Batman Arkham games, where it looks like armor plating. Like certain areas look like the shoulder padding and everything like that looks like it's a little bit bulkier than normal. The forearms look a little bit bulkier. And he's got this grappling hook that when he calls for it, it shoots out of that gauntlet and into his hand, and then he shoots it and the hook comes out. Which I thought was new, and that was decent. The way he flew, I thought was really cool. Do you remember that? Where he had the glider suit?
He was able to. It's built in there somehow where he can. He
basically just if you've seen these guys, these paragliders where they envelop themselves in a suit and they spread themselves out almost like a flying squirrel, and they just basically can glide through the city, and this is how he gets out of a situation at the Gotham Police Department.
And then it actually ended on a funny note.
But then the way you could tell it was the first time he had done this, because then when he tried to land, it's like he shoots out a parachute.
Yes. That kind of slows him down.
Right.
But he was going
under an L train, an elevated train,
elevated train overpass, and it got caught.
Yep.
And it screwed up his landing, and
he got
really
drilled. Like it's like he hits like the top of the L. Like the steel framing of it, and then he crashes down on top of like the bus, and then he flips and rolls onto a car, then a street. Like he gets really hurt.
Yeah.
Like I even in the suit, under normal circumstances, like I felt like you either would have probably broken something in reality, but like he should have been. I mean, he was hurt. Like he gets up and he's like limping away, but like that really freaking hurt. Like as you watch that.
No, absolutely. Now, talking about the suit again, it's obviously bulletproof, but I feel that he's too
bulletproof.
He's too cocky with his motions, because it's almost like he's not afraid of anyone shooting at him.
Yeah, which you haven't seen in previous Batman films, because even though the other Batman films, whether it's like usually like Kevlar or something like that heavy body rubber from the original Keaton films. I mean, they can take a shot, but they can't take multiple shots like that.
Yeah.
At some point, like it's going to penetrate somewhere in the suit.
Well, also the fact that not one person is aiming at his face, or at the very least, I bet you it would, probably glance off his head, because I'm sure there's metal in there too. But like, his whole
exposed.
Jawline is exposed. One bullet through his mouth, he's dead. And I'm just like, it's like, and why, people, if you're a, I don't know, trained assassin, gun for hire, you're going for the kill shot. Someone's going to sit there and say, well, I'm just going to shoot him right in the mouth, and nobody does it. There's a lot, and at the end of the day, what brings that to attention is the fact that there are so many bullets shot at him during the course of the movie.
A lot.
Even on odds alone, one of those bullets would have hit skin at some point.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There was some really cool effects. There was that one scene where he takes the power out in the Iceberg Lounge, and it's like he's going through, and all the gunmen are just like firing it into the dark.
Yeah.
And he's taking them all down one by one.
Yeah.
That was a cool scene. Made for a great effect. But I don't know, like you've never seen the Batsuit take this much gunfire before.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
That I'm surprised.
Something that this film does that I really don't think we've seen in in some of the other Batman films, the death scenes for the victims are much more gruesome than what we've seen.
Oh, so
Like
you're talking about
So when the mayor gets killed in the very beginning, he gets, bashed in the skull
yeah,
multiple times. The guy who gets the device put around his neck, and how he gets his head blown off.
yeah. I mean, and then you got the guy with the thing around.
And
his,
then he had like the mouse trap
the
that was around him.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. It reminded me a little bit of like Saw.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
definitely a little bit of Saw inspiration.
Almost even someone said the movie Seven. Almost like a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit. Like the movie style itself was
Yeah.
almost a little bit like Seven.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, these are movies. These are scenarios where somebody's putting bad people in scenarios to get their just desserts type of
Yes.
thing, and that's what the Riddler was doing. The Riddler was getting these people that, in his opinion, these were bad people, and he was he was exacting justice.
Yeah, he was taking his pound of flesh from them. He was someone who had felt wronged in the past, and that these people got away with it, and he didn't get to benefit from what originally was supposed to happen for him. So he ended up taking it out on the people that took advantage of the system. And he just started wreaking havoc on all of them and bringing everything to
Yeah.
light. And in a way, and you said this right after the film, that, the Riddler is right, but not in his methods.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, bringing, but, it's funny because if he had all this dirt, why not just bring it to the reporters and like let them do it?
Do it anonymously.
Or are you afraid that the reporters themselves are
on the
bought
take.
or on the take? And man, that's the one thing this movie shows a lot of is like, Gotham in the comic books has always been shown to be like a dirty, gritty place, and like everyone's, there a lot of cops and people in public service are dirty and on the take. This movie shows that in spades.
Yeah.
A lot of dirty cops, a lot of dirty politicians.
A lot of dirty people in high places, and just a lot of crime and gangsters and stuff like that.
Yep.
But it was funny. There's a number of scenes in the movie in Gotham where it's like Gotham really is inspired by New York City.
Yes. And
there's one scene that
there's a scene that almost looks like Times Square.
Times Square,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then
you have
the garden.
the Gotham Square Garden.
Gotham Square Garden instead of Madison Square Garden.
It's like,
yeah.
okay.
Like it's definitely heavy. I mean, but the Nolan Batman films, they were filmed over, like I'm thinking Pittsburgh and Chicago. This I think was filmed in somewhere in Canada and I think Australia. I think I saw in the credits. I think I saw that. So I don't know exactly where they filmed the location, but it looks very similar to Times Square.
One of the things I always found interesting about like what the Riddler was doing is, so like the Riddler's like leaving these puzzles and clues,
Right.
For Batman or whoever to figure out. And at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't connect the dots, like
They're going to miss the next.
yeah,
They're going to miss the next phase.
they're gonna mix the next phase. It's so if you're like the criminal,
It's going to throw his plan off.
yeah, right. His plan depends on people figuring out his clues.
Right.
So I always, and there's a lot of movies that do that too. Like, the villain or the serial killer, whatever, they're doing things in a certain way and they're going under the assumption that, there's some guy on the police force who's, mapping it all out,
Oh, who's
connecting
smart
the
enough.
dots and
Yeah.
getting the connections and following the breadcrumbs. And it's like, I'm sure that there's sometimes, there's a serial killer out there, whether it's in real life or not, that's doing all this intricate stuff that, nobody's catching or nobody's connecting any dots. All his hard work into being a creative criminal,
Right.
whether it's serial killers or masterminds or bank robberies, whatever,
Right.
Leaving their marks, quite often none of that stuff would ever get caught or connected. And they're just they're going to read about it in the newspaper and it's going to be like, oh, there was another bank robbery.
Yes.
It's like, nobody's getting what he's doing. And if Batman doesn't get, like, if Batman doesn't figure out all this stuff, you don't get to where you're going, because like the final like joke, whatever, or a riddle is like, to bring the bad guy into the light. And
Yes, bring the
and
rat, bring the
bring
rat
and
into the
and,
light.
and and the Riddler is just banking on the fact that at some point Batman is going to walk out that door of the
It was the
the
club.
club,
Yeah,
and
with
with the bad guy, and be under that light, because he's got his gun set up where he from his apartment, and that's where, and he's going to shoot him, and it works,
right.
and it's like,
But that was his plan, because when he's in Arkham and Batman's in there, he was like, "You played your part perfectly."
yeah,
He's telling them like, "You were the one that helped me accomplish this."
right,
And it's almost like the Riddler plays this giant trick on him, where the Riddler was using Batman to advance
agenda,
his whole agenda the entire time.
yeah.
And without Batman, he wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, it just would have been funny though if Batman took him out the back door to avoid the crowd, and said, "I want to get him straight to police. I don't want to," and it's like, why would he go through the back door? My plan is ruined.
I mean, we got to have a story somehow.
Right? It's just funny. I just laugh when like it's not easy to map this stuff out to the point where it's going to work exactly the way you want it, because all you need is somebody else to miss something or make a mistake,
Right.
or make a decision that's a little bit what you would
Yeah, like you're
expect them
you're
to.
trusting everyone to do their role to the T. And
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's not always how it
It's
goes.
not always going to work out that
No.
way.
Um, I really liked seeing Gordon and Batman's relationship in this. Like, you can already see that they've got this friendly relationship together, to the point where like the cops don't like it, and even Gordon's bosses. It almost looks like there was like the chief of police
Yeah.
was involved at one point,
Yep.
and he's really the commissioner before the commissioner was killed. He, you could tell, was not happy with it. So I thought that was like well done, especially like in year two, where like they don't trust him yet.
Yeah, but it almost seems improbable that is Gordon high enough in the police structure at this point to allow
To have the leeway.
to have the leeway to have that he's to give Batman the freedom that he has at
To
these
come-
crime
to come
scenes,
to the crime scenes.
come to these crime scenes,
Well,
like
most
he's
of these
always
guys
there,
most of these guys are beat cops, right?
yeah,
Most
so
of these
he's
guys,
above that,
and he's a lieutenant.
but he's
so
a lieutenant. I mean, if you're a lieutenant,
he's got some pull.
he's got some pull, but you don't
But he's also
have.
been in the. I think because he's been in the force for so long,
Yeah.
too. Like it's not like he's a cop who's been there 5, 10 years. You could see he's a seasoned cop.
But there's got to be people above him. They're going to say, "We don't like to stop doing it. You're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're on probation, or we're taking your badge away. Like you've broken protocols."
It would have been, what would have been nice too, if they would have said something about how Batman had solved some crimes in the past, and that's where Gordon gets the leeway, right?
Yeah, right.
Because if
It's
what's
earned.
right, it's earned. Because what's the point of bringing him in if he hasn't been able to solve anything? Why are you letting him in the crime scene?
And flouting it in front of everybody.
Right.
You know.
Like literally like showing that. Like, in scenes in other films, like usually Batman gets there on his own and observes the crime scene, or like has a private session with Gordon where he's not really around with the cops.
Right.
So that I found that to be a different take on their relationship. There's one thing that we get at one point, towards the beginning of the film, when the mayor's killed and Batman's there going to the crime scene. On his way out, he's looking at the mayor's family, and like the wife is upset, and the mayor has a son, and the son probably looks to be about 8 to 10 years old. And Batman's looking at him, and there's a moment where he's looking at him, and it's like obviously he's probably reflecting on his own childhood when he lost his parents. We see this kid multiple times in the film, And at one point, Batman even saves the kid at the funeral,
Right.
right?
Oh, right.
He
That's
saves
right,
him
that's
at the
right, that's
funeral.
right.
And again, we're focused on this kid. And then at the end of the film,
And he probably
he saves him again.
saves him, at Gotham Square Garden.
He pulls him out of the water,
Yeah.
right? Or the kid's really the first one to go and grab Batman's hand to trust him to pull him
Yeah.
out.
Maybe this is the
Right?
foundation
So,
of him being Robin.
I'm almost wondering now, like, are we setting this up to be,
Are we setting something up?
or,
Yeah.
like a Robin character, not your traditional Dick Grayson story or Jason Todd story or
Which is
Tim
o-
Drake story,
okay.
whichever Robin you're going for. I don't know which Robin they'd be going with,
Brand new take on Robin. That's fine.
but
too.
it would be. It's very very different than what we've seen in the past.
So
I thought Catwoman was. I thought the way that I thought Catwoman's outfit, her costume was very well done, down to earth.
yeah.
The subtle hint of the ears with the cut ski mask that she had on, the zip up outfit, very reminiscent of, I think, the Adam Hughes zip up costume that
Oh
they had
yeah,
on.
yeah. No,
Right.
I definitely feel like I see similarities between Adam Hughes' Catwoman
I mean, she
and this one.
she was an
Visually,
incredible fighter, which again, like, this is some of the stuff that
Yeah,
it's like we just have to, like,
yeah,
take it. We
where
just
did
have
she
to-
learn to fight like that?
Right. Like, we don't know anything about that, other than the fact that we know that she used to go to the club and hang out there when she was a little girl, and she found out that Falcone was her father.
Right. Oh, we haven't talked about Falcone.
Oh, so John Turturro.
John Turturro.
Yes.
Who going into this movie, I didn't know he was in this movie.
Yeah.
He plays the top
Like
gang
mob
mobster
boss.
boss, or at least for that family. Carmine Falcone, and he actually does. He plays a really good part.
He does.
And to be honest with you, it's like almost like a lot of the things he says in his dialogue is powerful. Like, he's a man
Yeah.
in power, and
He's a man that knows everything.
and he knows
He knows
everything.
he knows everything that's
Like,
going on.
he's not a scumbag, like.
Well, he is.
I mean, he is, but like, he's not.
He's not trashy in the way he says things.
Yeah, right.
He's not rubbing it in your
He
face.
chooses his words wisely. Like, a lot of the things that he mentioned when he was, when Bruce Wayne finally confronts him about his father, and what happened to him in the past. Like, Bruce didn't hit him
No.
because he told the truth, and it was all
From his point of view.
Yeah, from his point of view, but it was all about how, like, his father was a good man, but nobody's perfect, and in the right time, in the right situation.
But
in the wrong
Falcone makes it
conditions.
seem like, Falcone made it seem a little different, because then it's, you get, it was funny. So you get this new take on the Waynes, where Martha was an Arkham, which I think is a part of the comics.
That I wouldn't know.
I think that's a part of the comics where she's an Arkham, which is one of the founders of Gotham, and obviously everybody knows from Arkham Asylum. Her mother killed her father when she was very young, and she actually had some mental instability and was in, I guess, Arkham for a period of time. And this was going to be coming out around Thomas Wayne. He was running for mayor. And Thomas Wayne, didn't want the wife to be going through all this stuff. So there was a reporter who was going to basically blow up his campaign and release this story. And he didn't want it. He tried to buy off the reporter. The reporter said no. And so he goes to Carmine, and we find out beforehand that Thomas Wayne saved Carmine's life, right? So Carmine is shot. They bring him to the Wayne's doorstep, and he does surgery right there on the kitchen table and stitches up Carmine. And at that point, it's like Carmine now owes Thomas Wayne a favor.
Right. And see, that's the honorable part about, Carmine Falcone has a certain code.
Yes.
So it's like,
I think when it benefits him.
yeah.
Because
yeah.
Alfred was right. because Alfred, Bruce hears this story about how his father was like, that his father was corrupt, and that was, he went to Carmine Falcone to have the reporter killed off, or he went to Carmine Falcone and then the reporter died.
Well, he wanted
to kill the story.
He wanted the story to be killed. He wanted the
Carmine
reporter
just to scare him.
him.
Right.
Right.
But the way that Carmine tells the story, Carmine tells it as if like, your father came to me and he's like, do what you have to do. Right? And that's like kind of hard to hear. And it almost makes it assume that like he knew that Carmine was going to kill this reporter.
Right.
And then when you hear the story from Alfred tells
It's a
it
little
like
different.
Right, like Alfred's version of the story is that like his father felt ashamed for going to Carmine, but he didn't. It had nothing to do with the campaign. He didn't care about that. He just didn't want his mother to go through all of that scrutiny under the media if the story came out. And he realized, and Thomas Wayne realized when he went to Carmine afterwards that it was the wrong move to make. But at that point, it was too late.
Yeah.
And Alfred says like even good men make mistakes.
Right.
And then shortly afterwards, Thomas Wayne is killed. But Alfred says to Bruce, he's like, Carmine knew once he did that, then your father would owe him. Because because I think Bruce even says, like, why not just go to the police or something like that? And it was something about like, I forget the exact dialogue of how it went, but Alfred put it as like, if Carmine knew if he did this for him, that Thomas would owe Carmine. And that's ultimately what he wanted, especially if he won, especially if he became mayor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it was a very interesting, it was a new take on the Waynes, because you haven't really seen that aspect of the Waynes become political before.
Right,
like,
right.
Thomas Wayne is a doctor, but seeing that was different. And especially getting involved with the mob, right? Like the Waynes, you think such an honorable and high and mighty family tree.
Philanthropy up the wazoo.
You hear all this, and then all of a sudden you see what ends up happening. That was different, but and that, I think this movie did that really, really well. Like I think we keep talking about that. We keep talking about how different it is, but it's taking the Batman mythos from what we've experienced before, and not exactly spinning it on its head, but like completely changing the angle of how we look at it, and making it new. And did such a really good job with it. This is one of the first times where we see the Penguin be this club owner, but also we know he's like part of
an organization. He's not
right?
the boss.
It's not. Yeah, he's not the high and mighty boss, but it's his club that everyone uses and comes to. Like we saw this. You saw this a little bit in the Gotham TV show, but like as far as like the cinematic universe, like this wasn't Danny DeVito's Penguin,
right?
Right. This isn't Burgess Meredith, this Penguin. Like, it's a completely different take.
Yeah.
Oh God, you're so well done. Colin Farrell on this he's really, really good.
Well, one of the like visually, there was a lot of things. There was a lot of things with this movie that, like, just in terms of, okay, so the movie's 3 hours long, or close to 3 hours long, and I'll be honest with you, I felt that a lot of the action or the movement of the film was relatively slow paced. It wasn't like constant, stuff going on so fast that you got to keep track of it. It was stylistically done, I think, at a very slow pace, because the story that they wanted to tell, they didn't want to rush it.
I think they were really building the whole thing up, right?
Yeah,
like
no, it was a slow, methodical build up that was relatively consistent throughout the whole movie, in terms of even dialogue, how people talked was a little bit on the slow side. Like the conversations weren't fast paced. Everything was slow and subtle.
Everyone was taking their time
and poignant and focusing on every word and focusing on every scene. And honestly, I think you could have told the same exact story in lesser time, but it would have been a different movie.
Yeah, it would have had different weight. The dialogue would have felt
everything
different.
would have been everything would
Maybe it
have
would have
felt
felt rushed.
rushed.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between a movie that has dead space for no good reason, and then
Yeah.
there's a movie that has dead space because it's creating an impression.
Well, I think the payoff when the Riddler ends up killing Carmine when Batman brings him out of the club, like it's a big payoff.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's a slow boil.
Yeah.
It's a slow boil, and I'll be honest with you. I criticize the movies, quite a few movies, where I'm sitting there going like, they didn't need to take all this time to do this. They should have, they they could have taken out a good 20 minutes of dead space and either made the movie shorter and tighter, or like maybe added a little bit more depth somewhere.
Right.
And in this movie, it was long enough where the story they were telling, I don't think they needed to add much more depth, but I actually enjoyed the pace because
Yes.
it was, to me, it was purposeful,
Yep.
as opposed to just filling up dead space, to get a because they definitely went time wise, they went over time that normally
Yeah.
you would expect. You told me the movie was going to be 2 hours and 50 minutes.
57
And I'm
minutes,
just like,
something like
I'm
that.
like, really? I'm like, wow. But it was, to me, that was almost a creative choice.
Yeah.
And I liked it. And the colors in the film, I thought the movie was very dark. Like you mentioned earlier, you said like, it was almost like a film noir. And I'm like, from a color palette, there was not a lot of bold colors. Everything was, even in the nightclub, I think things were dark and muted.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a bright film.
No.
And I don't think it was meant to be because there
No.
was so
Oh,
many,
no.
so many.
I think that was
so many
stylistically-
seedy elements and this and that.
Yeah. No, I think style-wise, that's exactly what they were looking for.
And music-wise, I thought it worked very well musically.
I did too. I thought Michael Giacchino.
Giacchino? We're
Right,
going to
can
go
we
with
do that?
Giacchino.
Giacchino. Did the music for this. Also, he did Rogue One, as well as a number of other films, if you look it up. But that's one of the more notable ones that I know of personally. But I thought he had a really good theme that he weaved throughout
Yeah,
this.
because it wasn't one of these overpowering, bubbly with so many different strings and
Yeah.
like sometimes these musical themes are a little boring after a while.
This wasn't your Danny Elfman or John Williams
Right.
or Hans Zimmer.
Right, and even though
superhero themes.
most of those guys are good, like at some point you get a little tired of that music that you constantly hear.
To me,
The ups and the downs, and it's like trying to pull you it's trying to tell you what emotions to feel during the course of the
Right.
film. Whereas, this movie actually had a decent amount of classical music in it too.
Yes.
And, which is not that common. It's not
not unheard of.
completely uncommon. It's not
Right,
unheard
right,
of.
right.
But like a lot of people don't go that route. But it also, it went the full spectrum too. It had a lot of I think modern day type.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call it real kind
It was
of
like an alternative.
yeah. I would
Yeah.
say alternative rock type
Yes.
stuff.
There was that one song that was like repetitive that played a couple of times. It was
Yeah.
almost like the theme. You actually hear it in one of the Batman trailers,
Yeah.
and it plays in
And
this.
I think that was good too. I think they made good choices with the music, and it was varied, but at no point did they pick things that were too upbeat or things
Mm-hmm.
that didn't make sense to play as well.
Yeah.
But no, I liked it. And the only other scene that I remember being a little well, okay, so one character to talk about is the person who becomes the new mayor.
The woman.
The woman.
Yeah. So So this was basically this was all around election day.
Yeah.
Like right before election day, and the sitting mayor he's killed in the very beginning of the film. So it basically leaves the opponent. You're thinking she's running unopposed at this point because there's no one else who's filling that role. She of course wins the candidacy, and the Riddler's grand finale after he gets captured is that he's going to destroy what are, I guess, like dams or like
Yeah,
walls that are
they're
keeping the water out.
water walls that keep the water out somehow.
Yeah.
And
And all the water is basically going to flood towards the Gotham
well, I think
Square Garden.
well that too.
Well,
I
it's
think
flooding
it's
Gotham.
gonna flood the whole city.
And her head, her, I guess like, the victory party is at the Gotham Square Garden where everyone is located.
Right, and apparently, so all of the Riddler's followers
Yes.
are showing up in
His gear, like
in his gear, looking
yeah.
like the way he did with his his face wrapped up.
Yep. And they got these high-powered
High power,
rifles.
and they're all just showing up, and they have no idea who each other is.
No.
They're just all just like, oh yeah, I'm here. It's like a raid,
Yep.
and they're shooting people, and they wind up shooting the
They
mayor.
shoot the mayor.
And I thought it was really, I don't know, because because
But see, she was done for walking out. I understood that she was trying to remain strong and look like a strong,
right.
like she's going to stand with Gotham
Right,
and get out there.
But you don't walk in front of a firing squad to do that.
You don't walk out there with no protection.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm sorry. That was the one thing I didn't really believe is that she walks out there, no Secret Service, no security is going
Yeah.
out there with her and like keeping an eye out of everything.
Well, I'll be honest
You
with
know?
you. I think her character is one of the few characters I didn't really care for in the story. I felt like she was too young and too naive that I didn't feel, it's almost like a teenager running for mayor. Like I don't think she was a teenager,
No.
but I think she was in her 20s. You know what I mean? I think she was, to me, she didn't seem believable as a
candidate.
as a real candidate for mayor that people would rally
for.
behind.
Yeah.
I didn't find her believable, and then she gets shot,
Yes.
and then
Gordon pulls her out.
all this stuff starts crying, but then like she's walking around like pretty good for someone who's got a bullet in her. Like she was
When is
she wasn't like she didn't like when she like after she got shot, and they got her out of
Gordon drags her out. Gordon runs out there, takes her and drags her behind the curtain.
right, but then the water comes in
Yeah.
and starts people start getting what do you call they start getting trapped
Yes.
with debris and
Underneath
stuff
like
that.
the structures.
And like when she finally gets freed from wherever she is, she's moving pretty good. Like she's moving like she's not been shot.
Right.
And I'm just like standard typical last action hero movie scenarios where people get shot and they just walk it off.
Well, it could have also been too. I mean, adrenaline sometimes can have something to play with it. However,
Yeah.
being shot, you would think you're still going to be you're going to be affected by this.
Yeah, and I thought it was, and the one part that I thought was funny is like, okay, so all this water's rushing in. It's like water from whatever body of water is surrounding Gotham.
Right.
Probably not the cleanest water in the world. And now all that water is coming through the streets of Gotham, which is a dirty city.
Right.
And it's just rushing. It's like at this point,
You're going to die from infection.
yeah, this is like sewer water. Like it's like really dirty, nasty water. And now this girl's walking. The mayor's walking like waist deep.
Yeah.
Like in this water, and I'm just like her gunshot wound is underwater. Like she needs to get some alcohol on that to kill the
iodine.
germs. Instead she's rinsing this gunshot wound with dirty, nasty, Gotham-infested water. I'm like that's gonna kill her. Like
Not the bullet, like the infection.
the infection from that's just nasty. I'm like that's like oh my god.
It's so funny that like we'll pick on something like that because it's true.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like she should be like oh my god, I got to get out of this water because I'm bleeding out into this water. And
I liked what was different, not so different, but Batman's fighting style has been different over the years, right? And
Okay.
and Pattinson's physique is very different than the last two Batmans that we had.
He's almost tall and lanky.
He's
almost.
tall. He's a little bit leaner.
Yeah.
His body type almost reminds me of when Keaton played Batman.
But Keaton's short.
Keaton is short, yes, but he wasn't this like he didn't look like Christian Bale.
Yeah, he's not.
Or
He's not a
Ben
jacked,
Affleck.
intimidating guy.
Like both of those, like both Affleck and Ben Affleck's tall. Ben Affleck, I think he's like 6'4".
Okay.
Maybe yeah, I think he's like 6'4". But Ben was big in
Ben's-
Batman vs
yeah,
Superman.
no,
You
he's a
know,
big guy.
when you see him without a shirt on, and then you also look at Christian Bale. A couple times I saw him without his shirt. He's a guy who had like a lot of muscle, bulked up for this role. Pattinson, like you see him with his shirt off a couple times, he's not huge.
Yeah, so
he's got some. He's definitely has some definition to him, but not overly big.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's as good. To win the fight. It's really going to have to depend on his armor.
Yes.
And his fighting.
His
fighting style.
strike, like when he hits someone, it has to have an impact because he's got to get these people out quick.
Yeah.
I feel like he's got to either knock him down or knock him out in order to get to the next person.
Yeah.
But what was good is there was, again, because this is like his second year.
How do we
he
know
can't-
How do we know it's his second year?
It's in. I've read that this is supposed to be like a theme of like year 2.
Okay.
Okay, and it's
But there's nothing in the movie that says this is his second year because
just said that there's something about there's talk about like the vigilante that they talk of. They keep calling him the vigilante,
okay.
and they're saying that it that showed up. There was someone who said that towards the beginning of the film, like, oh, we've had this vigilante running around for. I want to say it was the past year, but
X amount of time.
I
Okay.
can't remember.
And that's
what it
good.
was.
And at the end of the day, it's things like that force you to pay attention to dialogue. Because it like
That gives things context.
right. Like you're being told without it being drawn in big block letters on a piece of paper saying yes, this is the time frame. This
Yes.
like you gotta make inferences. You gotta listen to what people are saying and figure out what's behind that as well. And that's okay. That it requires you to actively participate in figuring out what's going on.
But there's a lot of times in this where he just jumps into the fight almost, it seems without thinking, and then like there's times where like he gets hit. So it's not like he's dodging every single punch.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when he's taking on multiple members. Like especially when he's taking on, it looked like a Joker gang in the beginning, and then when he went into the club and he fought those guys too. Like there were times where like he's either getting hit or he's getting shot. Where like I think a veteran Batman is going to use different skills to minimize that risk, and not just jump in head first. And the one thing that I like, there's a conversation that Alfred has with Bruce at one point back in the cave, which I thought was really cool. It's not really so much of a cave; it almost looks like an abandoned underground like train station.
Yeah, it's weird.
Right? That's kind of like what it looked like to me. It almost looked like the Donner Superman where Lex is underground in like the abandoned train tunnel.
Well, I think I almost feel like didn't he when he was going to the secret entrance? Didn't he went down like stairs? It almost looked like
On the motorcycle.
Yeah,
He was downstairs and they turned around and then he went through like a gate that lifted up and shut back down.
Yeah.
Because you see this archway, this like stone archway, once he pulls in and he's there. And I'm like, that looks very reminiscent of like an abandoned train station.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a scene that Alfred's talking to him, and it's basically Bruce is so focused on Batman and being the cowl, like that's who he is in this film. Like he is Batman, and it's like Bruce isn't even a thought. It's almost like he it's almost like for a part of this film he doesn't even associate himself as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, well, even the mayor is talking to him and telling him like how, you're a Wayne and you come from a family with long philanthropic history and you're not doing anything.
Yes,
And he's really not.
he hasn't mastered the dichotomy of the two roles to
Yeah.
master both being Batman and then Bruce. And the way I almost think of it as like, because he's still so young, he hasn't figured out the rooms that Bruce Wayne can walk into that Batman can't.
Yeah.
And how he can be effective as Bruce Wayne also. And I feel like maybe that's what they'll show in some of the subsequent films, because I think Alfred's trying to reach him at that level. And they have this argument and fight, and Bruce even tells him, "Is like, you're not my father," which of course I think stings.
Well, he's not like a business entrepreneur
Entrepreneur, right?
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like he's not like the head of this massive
The Wayne Industries.
Wayne Industries. Like
Yeah.
that's all in the future, I guess.
I think so, and I hope they show that, like, as they go forward, like they start to show like what Bruce does for Gotham, and maybe Gotham being underwater like this, the Wayne name starts to come about, and he starts using his resources to help maybe lift Gotham out of the bottom, lift them up from this poverty that they're in. I mean, that's what I would hope to see in the next.
Well,
In the
I'm
next film.
assuming that there's going to be more than they're going to keep going with this. At least for
Yeah, I think they're
hopefully,
gonna they're gonna get a green light.
We get a trilogy out of this.
And what was interesting is Pattinson's already talking about that he hopes to see. I love how the actors that are in the films, that basically they're in the know. They're talking about what they would like to see. I remember after Man of Steel, Henry Cavill was talking about he'd love to fight Doomsday. Soon enough, we start seeing Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
He's going to fight Doomsday.
Right.
Pattinson starts talking about the Court of Owls, which is a storyline by Zack Snyder and Greg Capullo.
Okay.
That was the storyline that started with the New 52 of Batman when that came back out, when they re-released it. Mm-hmm. And it's like the Court of Owls is this secret society in Gotham that's gone on for generations. Mm-hmm. That would be really interesting to see up on screen.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Especially with Gotham in its almost like lowest point that it's been in years, to see the Court of Owls kind of step up. That would be interesting.
Now, you mentioned something earlier before that I forgot about, that gang on the train.
The Joker gang.
Like, I mean, is that what they are? I mean,
I'm assuming that they're at, because why would they paint their faces like that?
Yeah, like to me, it was
Not to
very
mention-
reminiscent of Joker, and I'm like, this is like.
Well, there is that scene. So there's a scene at the very end of the film where the Riddler is in Arkham.
Yeah.
Right? And he starts talking, and then there's a person next to his cell who starts talking to him. And then at the very end, what does he do? He starts laughing.
So we know that's the
So
Joker.
we're pretty sure that that's supposed to be the Joker. But not for nothing, as much as I
So
love the
assuming
Joker.
the thing is, if the Joker's in Arkham, he got caught at some point. So
But these are like followers.
he definitely could have followers already.
Yeah, these are people that he's inspired.
Yeah. So that to me made sense.
Yeah.
The other oddly funny nitpicky thing is, so Alfred gets caught
Yes.
in a blast of C4,
Yeah.
and he's in the hospital, and at first I thought he was dead.
They make it seem that way. For
They make
sure.
it seem like he should be dead, but then so he's not dead. So I'm like, okay, he's badly burned. He's badly burned, and when we get to the hospital, not only is he not badly burned, but his beard is still fully intact. He didn't burn
He
it.
didn't singe it.
No, there's no singed beard. There's no singed hair. I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, was he just knocked out from the force of the explosion?
Maybe he had enough time to pull that big table up and block him from the blast.
He purposely jumped away and kept his face on my beard.
Well, also too, when the guy during the funeral, the DA, when his head explodes, Batman is not more than 2 feet from him.
Oh yeah, that was a little.
And he gets thrown back, but I mean, like you said before, this whole part of his face is exposed under the cowl.
Yeah, it's
and
getting there right in the explosion. Yeah, that to me, he was way too close to that explosion, and for no good reason. He shouldn't have been that close, but then he was that close, and he should have been a lot more hurt.
It's like he saw the timer clicking down,
Yeah.
and you knew, there was at that point in time, there was no way he was going to spill the beans as to who the informant was.
Right.
So he dies. He just decides, okay, I'm just going to die.
Right.
And Batman just doesn't do anything. He can't do anything, and just gets pushed back. It was just such a different but good film. When we talk about Superman the movie and our love for that film, what it was about Richard Donner's movies, that it was a good movie that had Superman in it.
Yes.
And this film is very reminiscent of, it was a really good mystery detective story
Yeah.
that had Batman in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I
and it was
agree.
set in Batman's world. And I thought Matt Reeves did a really good job with that. Uh, the visuals for this, setting it in, like, I know it was set in modern times, but it still felt like it was older.
Yeah.
The only thing that tells you that it's set in these times is the technology that you see. You know, if you didn't see that, you would have thought that this possibly took place in the past, just because of how like dirty and gritty Gotham was, because that's how New York City was for a long time. You know, until it got cleaned up. So
Yeah.
you almost kind of, I don't know, you get pulled. It seems like it's like pulling you back a little bit, making you think that it's older than it really is.
And it's really kind of funny because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I don't think they can get away with doing a movie like that because it's all tied. There's, the Marvel, most of the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, are very formula, and they can't stray too far from that formula because otherwise it's not gonna mesh. When
Right.
you see, the Captain Americas and the Iron Mans and like all those movies, all kind of, put together, because and because they're together, you can't do anything like you wouldn't be able to do a movie like Joker,
Right.
in as being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it wouldn't fit. So at the end of the day, you can complain about DC that they don't have the structure that Marvel has, but then again, they don't have the limitations
I thought this film
that
was a big
Marvel
risk.
was. Well, no,
Seeing
exactly.
seeing this film at its completion, at the very
Yeah,
end, like, that to me was a big risk that I think Warner Brothers let Matt Reeves do this film.
yeah, no, well, that's the thing. When you do something creatively different, there's a risk
Yeah,
involved.
but I think it's going to pay off, because I think,
Yeah.
you and I both agree that we both like the film.
Well, at the end of the day, I think people are going to use the Joker argument to make their.
Right.
They're gonna say, look,
Like, see
don't-
what they
don't-
did with this,
look what they
and how
did with Joker.
successful it
Look
was.
look how much money Joker
I think that was
made.
$1 billion movie, and the budget was nothing.
The budget was nothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the biggest departure from the Marvel Cinematic Universe formula is probably Guardians of the Galaxy, but it leaned towards comedy.
Right. Which is a failsafe, was a good move.
Yeah,
And it
right,
worked.
right. Whereas opposed to like they're not going to do something overly dramatic or noirish
Right.
or anything crazy off the rails. So there's the only reason why a Marvel movie does bad is because it is bad.
Yeah.
There are some Marvel movies that didn't make a lot of money, but it doesn't stop anything because
No.
that movie, even though one movie didn't make that much money, another movie made 10 times its return. And it's like it's all one.
Yes.
It's all one plan. It's not a matter of DC's got to sit there and say, okay, how did the Batman do? Are we going to do a second one?
Yep.
It's
Well, I think it's gonna. I think after this weekend, I think they're gonna be pretty sure that that they're gonna get the green light. It made a lot of money last
yeah.
night.
I would imagine it. I would
The
imagine
returns
it's
on a
gonna make
Thursday
lot
night,
of
it made
money.
20-something million last night alone for a Thursday night showing. That's a lot of money.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty. I'm sure it was a hard sell for Matt Reeves to say, oh, and by the way, it's going to be a 2 hour and 50-minute movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
But I wonder what his rough cut was. Like, this was the
Yeah.
final cut. So what was
I
your
mean,
rough cut?
How long? How long was Zack Snyder's Justice
4
League?
hours.
Yeah, that was really long. But also, then again, how long was the extended version of Batman v Superman or Superman v
Three.
Batman? Yeah,
3 hours.
exactly. That was the extended cut was 3 hours. The original cut
It
on
was
screen,
about 2.5.
yeah, at 2.5 at best.
I know. It was a well done film. John and I think both highly recommend going to see this movie in the theaters.
I'm trying to figure out my star rating. I think I give it a really solid 3 stars. And some people are going to say, oh, 3 out of 4, but I'm really strict. Like my 3 stars is a good 3 stars. My 3 stars is most other people's 3.5. But because I'm really strict. But to me, a 3-star movie is a good movie.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed this movie. I
Like
thought
I
it was
would go.
good.
I would see this movie in the theater again. Like if you asked me like in a week from now to go see it, I'd go again because I thought it
Oh
was
yeah,
good.
no, I would definitely see it again.
I like
I
that.
would want to see it again because I think there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of
Well, now I
there's a
can-
lot of gritty detail that I want to
One-
really get absorbed.
One Easter egg that I saw in the film, and I told John about this, and I think I'm right about this.
Yeah, I definitely want to see this.
So there's this inside the Wayne Tower. There's Alfred's. He's doing like paperwork or bills. I think this was during this.
I think this is right before
this
the
right before
explosion.
the explosion with the
Yeah.
C4. There's a statue of a head, like near the table that he's sitting at, and it is really reminiscent of the head statue that we see,
the bust,
in the old
Batman TV
Batman
series.
TV series,
Yeah,
with Adam West and Burt Ward.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of that. I'm pretty sure that's definitely the same one, but
that I would want to see.
I'd want confirmation on that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I saw that and I thought that was interesting. So where this franchise goes from here, they're definitely doing another film. Are we going to see a Robin next time? Don't know.
Don't know.
I think Selena Kyle will eventually make her way back. She leaves Gotham at the end of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see her again. And the next,
Because there's a romantic.
yes,
There's a little bit of
They did a good job
romantic,
with that.
engagement between Catwoman and Batman.
I thought they did a good job with that. I
Yeah.
really did. These two misfits that are similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that continue. That was good. And so the next DC film, I think, is Black Adam.
Oh, sure, with The Rock.
Yeah, which I think is going to be pretty good. They're getting the JSA involved in there. We're going to get our first live action.
JSA, Justice Society of America.
We're going to get our first appearances of Dr. Fate.
Wow.
Hawkman is involved. The Atom. No, sorry, not the Atom. I think it's just Atom or Atom Smasher, whoever the guy who grows. So should have some really interesting choices, some character choices that they pulled in for this movie.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Yeah, and I think The Rock is Dwayne Johnson's proven himself over the years to be a great action movie star and great comedic timing. So I'm looking forward to seeing
He's
this.
been in a lot of movies.
Yes.
And a lot of those movies have made a good amount of money, too.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually had some pretty stellar career, from wrestling to cinema.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that one. And then, of course, we got The Flash later in the year. And that, to me, is going to be a big one.
But I think the next superhero movie come out is Doctor Strange.
No, the next superhero movie coming out is Morbius.
Okay. Morbius
That's
is coming out.
in April.
Gotcha. And then Doctor Strange in May.
Then Doctor Strange in May.
That should be exciting.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
So, good stuff.
Yep.
I think that pretty much does it for us, right?
Yeah, I don't think
I think we
I
talked
covered
a lot on the
everything. I
Batman.
think I covered everything that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, the Easter egg, the very last Easter egg at the end.
Oh, there is so for people asking if there's an after credit scene,
It's we sat there with
We
a
sat
decent
through it.
number of other people waiting at the end credits.
there is an after credit scene, but it's not.
It's not anything all that interesting.
Nope. It's
just
just really a
The,
question mark,
the Riddler's question mark shows up on the screen like a
cue, like a blinking cursor. Like an old
on a
PC.
computer screen, whatever.
Yeah.
And what does it just say? Goodbye.
Goodbye, right?
Goodbye.
And that was it.
That was it.
So-
It was just like, really? Okay.
We got a little something there, but not.
They gave us a little something.
I think Matt
Nothing-
Reeves
nothing
did that
all
on purpose to
spectacular.
kind of screw with everybody.
Yeah, that's all right. The Barbie told me you got to do something. He's like, well, I don't want to do anything. Well, you got to do something.
I mean, the after credit
All right,
scene.
fine. If I have to do something, then this is what I'm doing, and that's it. Goodbye.
The after credit scene really could have been Riddler talking to Joker in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, that could have been.
That could have
been.
been the after
Instead,
credit
that's how
scene.
they kind of ended the movie with
So,
that.
but yeah, guys, overall, I think that's it for us. We
Yep.
are going to head out, but we hope you enjoyed the review. Again, guys, please like, share, follow, comment, do whatever you can to help this channel continue to grow. We really appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers.
We will see you guys
I
next
think I have a
time
little bit
at
left.
the movies.